Hi, I'm Ethan. I love muzzleloading. Today I'm going to show you how I connected this hand-woven strap to this banded southern horn. I picked up this strap from Carrie at Horn and Fiber, and I picked up this banded horn from Tim Crosby at the 2021 CLA show. This video is going to be all about these leather ends and how I attach the strap to the horn. You can go out and find complete powder horn sets that have a strap and everything with it, but it can be a lot of fun to mix and match from different artisans and craftspeople, which is what I've done here today. So we're gonna start looking at some really basic leather work here. So to get started here, I have a couple simple tools for this horn strap project. I have a bottle of mahogany and a bottle of russet Phoebing's dye. I have a little dauber for that as well. I have two scrap pieces of veg tan cowhide here. It's about 4 ounces or so. It's pretty thin. You don't want this to be too thick. I picked this up from Tandy off of some of their full side sales. I have 2 binder clips to help me hold things, a couple leather needles, a little pair of scissors, my awl, and then I like to use this waxed linen thread. It's a little hard to find right now, but it is, I like it a lot. I like working with it. Then in addition to these pieces, you're gonna need a really thin, narrow strip like this. This is probably about 1 foot long and 1/4 of an inch wide. I already have it dyed because I've gone through and tested this a little bit. So this is what we're gonna be replicating on the end of this strap. So it's made up of a couple parts. We have the strip or the thong here, and we have a rectangular piece that folds over, and our weeping heart design here. I like to put this on a few things because this is my personal bag. I want this to match a little bit. I've already cut this to be the same width as this other piece, so I'm just going to wrap this around and get a rough idea of the length that we need. So I can just kind of hold there. And I'm not going to be too precise with this. Take my snips like that. I'm going to cut off that little mark there a little bit. There we go. So I'm going to set that aside to dye. And next we want to cut out our weeping heart. So I'm just eyeballing these. I want it to be roughly the same width as our strap itself. So I'll take a pencil and mark the width of that, just so we have a rough idea. And then I'll line up the one I've previously made and make just a rough length mark. Now I came to this dimension here just by lining up and marking on a strip of leather the width of my strap so that it would match pretty evenly. This was my test one. You can see it's off a little bit there, but on the final version we'll want that to match up a little bit more. With our rectangle laid out here a little bit, I find that it helps if I find the center, and with any rectangle you can find a center line by drawing an X between the corners. So that gives me a rough center there. I can just go straight up and down from that center point, and then I just kind of rough this in. I like that to be pretty narrow as it comes in, just kind of accented. I bring that around. Then I come in almost to that halfway mark on the top bulbs of this heart, just kind of for my own personal taste. Then I can cut that out and we'll get ready to dye. This doesn't have to be perfect or match perfectly. This is going on the horn that's going to my Kibler Southern Mountain Rifle, so I don't mind it being a little bit homespun in design. I'm going to clean that up a little bit though. Now, if you didn't have your strip or your thong already cut, you'd want to cut that out as well. I have a little strap cutter that I use from Tandy that helps out on pieces like that. But at this point, we're going to set up and use our die. So I learned from Jeff Luke on this dye to cut it about 50-50 with just rubbing alcohol. It extends the life of your bottle of dye a little bit, and it also helps you layer colors as you're working with something to give it a little bit of a different tone. So this mahogany is a really dark kind of chocolate brown, and the russet I find is a really red, lighter, warm brown. And I like combining those to get this kind of deep chocolate, where you can see we have some variation in that dye color because we're using the two different dyes. So I like to do all of this on a scrap piece of wood. For this color combination, I start with the mahogany, and then I do a layer of the russet on top. Like I said, this is cut 50-50 with some rubbing alcohol, so it's gonna go on a bit darker than it's gonna dry. It's gonna dry much lighter, but that's okay. I try to think of this leather dye, and again, I'm not a professional. I'm just kind of learning as I'm doing this, but I like to use this dye like a watercolor. So by having it thinned down, I can layer colors like I would painting with watercolor and get some different colors and mixtures. You want to make sure you're going around and hitting those edges too. And if I see a spot starting to lighten up, I'll just hit it again. And I'm doing both sides because the dye permeates through both of those sides pretty well that way, and gives you a nice, I think, a fuller, richer color. So there's our heart. And then just so we're not wasting any, I'll hit my strip here with another coat. Putting the lid back on my dye. Now this first coat is going to take a little while to dry, but what I like to do is crinkle this up a bit and work it while it's still wet. My hands are going to get a little dirty, but I'm not worried about that. And by working this as that's wet, it's going to dry with wrinkles, and it's going to dry kind of crinkled up. And this is going to press and push dye out of those creases. You can see right there. And that's going to give us some variation to the finish of our leather and give us a not new look right out the gate. So I'd like to do this on these pieces, is I'll just smush them together and crinkle them up just like that and set them to dry. And I'm going to do the same thing with this heart, is I'm just going to work it with my hands back and forth. And that's going to help give us that variation. It's going to help everything look not new as we're working with it. I like that. You don't have to do that by any means. You know, going to a camp or a rendezvous or something, or a match even with new stuff is fine. For my personal taste though, this is what I'm going for. So there, I'll let that set and dry. Because it's mixed with alcohol, really 45 minutes to an hour and you're good to go. So we'll let that dry and be back. Now that this is dry, we can unfold these, uncrinkle them, and we can see that texture as that dries. These tight wrinkles here are nice and light, and our kind of open areas are nice and dark. Those light areas are going to take that lighter red russet color a little bit more and give us some of those different colors. Now this didn't take a whole lot of color, so we might need to hit it a little bit more, but I don't mind with this kind of design that heart being a little more red. So we'll take our russet now and just do the same thing. I want to make sure I get those edges again. Go. Then I'll do the same thing, and I'll try to crunch this up differently this time so we have wrinkles in different spaces. Kind of go like that. And then I'll just do that with that heart. There we go. With everything dry now, we can unfold it and kind of get a better look at what we've got here. When I'm doing something like this, I try to get the color where I want it to be before I'm attaching it to the strap, because I don't want that leather dye to get onto that strap and mess anything up. So I think looking at this heart, I'm gonna give it another coat. This is all up to your personal preference on how far you wanna take any of this stuff, you know, in your own personal color choices. A lot of my equipment has this color combination on it, so I'm trying to keep it a little consistent. My example here, I cut a slit for my strap to go through this folded up piece before we applied it. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to get a rough idea of center here by folding this up. Take my knife, make half the cut, flip this around, make the other half. That's plenty. At least I thought it was. So I'm threading through, so I have a couple inches there of my strap inside of this cover here. Now, right, wrong, or otherwise, what I did was stitched all of this together at once around the strap. So, get my section of strap here. When I say that, I mean that I've stuck my strap in and I've stitched this leather thong to the woven strap and to our leather cover all in the same go. You could just attach the narrow strap here to this and then stitch everything together through the heart. But I thought this way I would have what's actually holding my horn woven or stitched through all 3 layers here to give it some extra strength and durability. When I'm doing this, I don't necessarily want to use my awl more than I need to through the woven strap here. So when I've got this section, on the heart section we'll do later, you're kind of stuck. But I'm going to go ahead and do my leather, or punch my holes through all 3 layers. There we go, yeah, we're pretty centered. Off the woven strap. Checking to make sure I'm in the center. And with that now we have enough that we can go through and attach all this together. Now this section here I've already attached to my horn, and I want to pay attention to my faces. So I have my heart face here and I have the clean face of my narrow strap attached to my horn facing upward. So I'm setting this to the side with the correct faces up so that I'm keeping this all correct. It makes it a little bit nicer, I think, to have all of your faces face in the same direction. Lining that up, I'm going to take my binder clip here. I'm going to clamp it down like that. And that's going to be enough to hold all of that together. With my needle and thread now, I can navigate through these holes. And I like to do this stitch. I call it a saddle stitch, but I've been told that I'm not exactly doing a proper saddle stitch. But what I'm doing is passing my needle, or each needle, through each hole from either direction. This creates a super strong stitch, and this is the kind of stitch that you would find on a lot of original accoutrements, because it just makes for a really strong stitch. I've mucked around with this stitch quite a bit and tried to cut it and mess with it a little bit, just in my my exploits. And once you've done it, you can't really undo it. Each time I go through there, I'll pull that stitch tight and just keep going through. And once we've done that, I can just pop that binder clip off. We don't really need it anymore. At this point now, the strap is as strong as it's really going to be. You could stop here and do a stitch across the top here and secure this, or you could make it so that these flaps here weren't nearly as long and came down here, and you'd be pretty well set. But one thing I want to do to really finish this off is we're going to back stitch a couple holes here with our saddle stitch, as I'm calling it. And this is going to really solidify or finalize this run of stitches. It's not going to be easy at all for this to come undone or come loose in any way. Because we're going to cover this up with our heart, I want to make sure that this stitch is never going to come undone. You'll see folks talk about trying to tie or glue their thread down, but really when we look at the amount of time and the amount of use that originals went through that are double back stitched like this one and stitched together like this one, you really can't get there with tying your knot and gluing it. That will come undone and does more often than not. Okay, so I'm coming through there. I'm leaving both threads in the back here. I'm going to bring each thread back through to finalize it on the front side where it will be covered by the heart, so those ends can't get frayed or anything over time. So we'll just pop that back in there. We'll do the same with this one. That'll give us an extra little level of protection. Not that we need it for something like this. Now we can take a look at finalizing our strap by adding on our little weeping heart motif here. Now we're going to do this the same way we did the other stitching, where we have that saddle stitch kind of running through. It'll be a little more difficult now because we're connecting through 3 layers of leather plus our heart layer plus our woven strap here. So what I'm doing and what I did on my test run is I like to line up this heart so that my center point down here is covering up our stitching down here. And this way I can kind of line up this first initial stitch down in through the hole that's underneath right here. I like to start with this point. See, we went right through there nice and easy. Excuse me. I found that going through and connecting here at this point works best for me because it centers and keeps this heart kind of in place. And I have then the longest thread at the start as I start stitching here, rather than getting down to this point and things get short and a little tighter. So I'm going to come up my right hand side here with my awl. I'm going to punch about 6 holes to get started. Okay. Nice to see you. Wow, you're so handsome. And then I'll get my thread out here. I've learned over the years to measure out roughly around the edge or the length of the stitching that you're going to be doing. Here I've just eyeballed it. And then we do about 4 or 5 times that length in actual thread before we cut it off. This should give us enough to go through and finish this stitching. I usually do a little bit more just in case, especially on something like this where I have small pieces. It can be a really hard time to go through and try to patch something in. So just like last time, run our thread through our hole here. Run up. It's nice to piggyback off of those holes we've already cut or already punched, really, when you can, but it's going to be pretty limited on this project. Usually you can get maybe 2, but see there, I've gotten 2. Most of the time it's just going to be that first one, and that depends too on the kind and size of the heart that you're working with. Let's see if I can find that one. Go. And this same process would work with any end that you put on a strap like this. It doesn't have to be the same heart motif that I'm using. After each stitch, again, I'm pulling that nice and tight, and that'll snug down the stitch and the pieces that you're stitching together. Really simple, really durable. This is the kind of thing I like to do in the evenings, you know, after getting home from work. Just come through and whip something together like this. You can see the heart line diverging from our main stitch there on the back side. That's what it looks like on our front side. I'm not measuring any stitches here, just kind of eyeballing it. Here you can see all of the holes that I've punched. I'm not too concerned about making sure it's perfectly even as we go around. Here you can see the heart stitched now onto the end of our strap. I did a double back stitch down here in this corner to make that nice and solid. And you can see we have a little bit of a color difference between the heart and our backer piece here. This is a little more red. I applied a little bit more of the russet color to give us that kind of different, that different color there. You don't have to do that. When I put these hearts in, I like to give them a little bit more of a red or warm, but by no means do you need to do that. Now we can go ahead and snip those two lines. I snip them pretty close and set my thread over here to the side. Now comes one of the more difficult parts of doing this. We need to attach the strap to the horn. And it's not like overtly difficult, I think. I think it's more difficult just in the sense of I want to get it nice and tight. So this end here I've already done. I've got 3 stitches, or 4 it looks like, coming through here. And this wraps around the front end of the horn here. And you can see there, I've got it pretty tight. I wouldn't mind that being a little bit tighter if I could do it, but I have my own limitations here. So we're gonna replicate this same stitching process at the butt or the base of the horn back here, wrapping our leather strap around that end. To do this, I like to get the strap so that it's not twisted, because once we do this, if you do this last stitch or stitching process here and your strap is twisted, it's going to be twisted no matter what. And we don't want anything to be permanently twisted if we don't have to have it that way. So my strap is a little bit wide for this, so I'm making sure to press the strap into that plug as much as I can, get a nice tight fit. I want that to be pretty snug so this can't work its way off over time. And then what I'll do is make a mark with my pencil here to give me a little bit of an indicator there of where that is, where that strap is as it wraps around the base of the horn. Then I can come in with my binder clip and clamp this so that I know that this isn't flexing or shifting in length at all. And then let's kind of unwind that from the plug. I'm gonna set the horn up here, out of my way. So here now you can see that line that I marked. I want my first stitch against the horn to be as close to that line as possible to get it as tight as we possibly can here. You can go probably a little bit past that, but it's gonna get a little hairy. So what I like to do is start my punching right at that line and work my way back up the strap. And that makes sure my anchor point is tight around the plug of the horn, and the rest of my stitches back up here are for support. Back here you can see I've doubled up this strap as it comes back up through here. And that's really going to be the length of my stitching there. You can make this a little bit longer or shorter and trim it off or you know, what have you, but I like to have a little bit of extra space there for my stitching. Make this a little easier, I set my binder clip at the edge of my support board here, and I make my first punched hole. This is much easier to do, I think, off of the horn, unless you miss it like that. Then what I do once I get a couple holes in there, I'll come back here and grip the other end of my strap so that this can't walk back or adjust in any way. And I'll complete or finish out my stitching holes here. So because I've got a little bit of a narrower strap here on the back, I'm flipping this over so that I know I'm getting centered on the narrow part of the strap as I go through into the front piece. And again, this is just one way to do this. It's the way I've found that seems to work. If you want to learn more about stuff like this, the Honorable Company of Horners at hornguild.org is the place to go and learn. They are real masters of hornwork and the accompanying accoutrement and traditional crafts. So that's plenty for me. I've got 6 holes there. I probably could have done with a couple less, but I think that'll work out fine for us. Now that I have these holes and I know that they can index with each other, I can remove that clamp and we can get some thread here. If I had a little bit of extra thread out of the initial stitching, I may have used that. That's a little too short, I think, for what we're doing. And these pieces are just a little bit too short as well. I like to try to conserve these materials where I can, but thread is still cheap enough that I don't mind cutting off a little bit and saving it for something else. A lot of times trying to use a little bit of a short piece of scrap that you have is going to give you a little bit more of a headache as you're trying to get everything out of it that you can. Go ahead and thread each of my needles. I can set my awl and my pencil to the side. Because we're bringing our horn back in, I like to try to keep as clear of a space as possible. And I'm laying this in an orientation as it hangs from my body so I can keep an eye on all of the strap. Like I said, we don't want any twists in that strap if we can keep from it. So now this is all about lining up those 2 holes. Like that. This won't really start to get tight until you are bringing through this, really on the second stitch. Get that to where you guys can see. Go. Now here's where we get to see a little bit of how tight we can get that around that plug. And that's not too bad, I don't think. We still have a little bit of rotation if we need it. We're well inside this plug end, so there's really no way, unless this leather really stretches out over time, that it's gonna make it over that 1/8 of an inch there, which is what I like to see on something like this. I wanna make sure that this is as durable as I can make it. I'm not, counting on this for survival, but I do want to make an item like this, especially something that I'm gonna use. I wanna make it as strong as I can. That way I can pass it on to my grandkids and they can use it like I plan on using it. You might look at this stitch and think that it's a little too much work doubling back through each hole, or going through each hole twice, I should say. But it's really just a perfect stitch. It's so durable. I picked up this horn from Tim Crosby at the CLA show in 2021. It's a nice banded horn, and it's got this kind of beehive butt plug in it. And that's a really traditional Carolina style horn, kind of a southern style horn really. And it's gonna go well, I think, with my Kibler Southern Mountain Rifle. I picked up this strap from Carrie Masaryk from Horn and Fiber. And she was really great to work with. I'd seen some of her work at the CLA show and knew I wanted to get one, but did not connect with her at the show. And then afterwards, I reached out to her on Instagram at Horn and Fiber. And it was great. She asked, what kind of equipment I was using, and I sent her some pictures and kind of gave her the thinking I have behind my kit and my gear. And kind of let her run with it, and it was great. Got a really nice strap, and I mistakenly ordered it a little bit long, so I'm going to be able to get a couple straps out of it, which is going to be sweet. Kind of a his and her strap situation, I think. We can flip this around, give her a little snip. And then you can see here I've got a little bit of a tail. I can leave that, or I can just snip it off a little bit closer to the stitching. And there you go. You can see we've got the strap attached at either end of our horn here. We have our nice little strap covers or ends there connecting to our hand-woven, hand-spun, naturally dyed horn strap there from Carrie at Horn and Fiber. I really tickled pink about this, and I really can't wait to get it out and start using it, fill it up with powder and start giving it a go. I hope you've enjoyed this little tutorial here today. It's something pretty simple, but I thought it might be nice to show how I do it and maybe give you some inspiration to start digging into your own research on how to make your own accoutrements for your muzzleloaders and your other kind of living history gear and equipment. Again, I'd like to thank Tim Crosby for his beautiful work on this horn, as well as Carrie at Horn and Fiber for this beautiful strap. I really couldn't be more pleased with it, and I'm excited to get it out with everything else, and especially this spring and summer here, and get it out and use it. It's not sponsored anyway. I paid full price for both of these items, and I'm really happy to. It's really nice to be able to give back to the community and the artists within it. So I really encourage you, when you can, get out and buy something handmade by an artist in the community. You're helping keep all this going. You're helping support the community, and you're really supporting some artists that are keeping history alive. It's a lot of fun for us to go out and shoot and things, but we can look good doing it thanks to artists like Tim and Carrie. So if you'd like to learn more about this or anything else related to muzzleloading, please visit ilovemuzzleloading.com. I'm Ethan. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you next time.